actually, is it the equinox, Thomas, or not? I mean, just because it's the 21st doesn't mean it's actually.
Yeah, well, I think it is actually. I noticed there's the discrepancies, but I'm pretty sure. Last week I did read something, and it absolutely is the 21st. It's the equinox.
Good. Perfect day for us to do this. Perfect day for you to be where you're at. I'd be willing to bet you've seen, as you always do, lots of similarities between where you're living and the place that we're getting ready to go. Yeah.
Oh gosh, yes, that's quite. Was astounding. Yeah. It was astounding. It shouldn't be, but it is. Well, then did you know there was a recent genetic study. Now, I don't put a lot of faith in these things because they change every few years, as you know yourself.
Yeah.
Where they said that, like, the earliest Irish people had a significant percentage of Sardinian DNA in them.
Yeah.
And I found it interesting because there was this group. The origins of Sardinia are really quite unknown. There's the whole thing of, are they the sea people? Are the Nuragic civilization the legendary sea people? Possibly, but then again, they only left that kind of culture in Sardinia and nowhere else. But there's I find that very, very interesting. But I didn't go too mad on it because I know next year there'll be another DNA test and they'll say they're from somewhere else. It always seems to be.
Yeah, actually, that kind of reminds me. It's not something I want to necessarily get into too much, but I just found out there's a Phoenician settlement there. Did you know that?
In Sardinia?
Yeah.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, well, it would have been an ideal like halfway point between the Italian peninsula and the east coast of Spain.
For me, it's located in Monte Sarai. Sarai sounds Syrian. It sounds Middle Eastern, obviously, to me, to my ear. But the Phoenicians, to me, compared to what we're actually looking at, you and I, are modern. Okay, they feel modern to me compared to Nuragic and prior.
Yeah. I consider them in the kind of like classical era almost, Romans, Greeks.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Now the similarities, let's talk about the similarities.
Okay.
There are parts of Sardinia that might as well be the west coast of Ireland.
Yes.
It's surreal. Especially when you go up in the mountains, you get these moss upon stones, not to plug my website, but that's one of the places I noticed that. The interior of the country seems to be, this is another thing, people are coming, bring a decent pair of boots with you. The interior of the country seems to be made up of these bowling ball sized rocks, and they're covered in moss. Now, they're not hard to walk on, they're just annoying, but make sure you have a decent pair of boots or a good pair of walking shoes that will deal with that, because some of you can go up to where the megalithic sites are, and there'll be a gate and a little sign, but you still have to kind of walk across the terrain to get to it. Yeah. Not huge distances, but that's all part of the vibe as well.
Yeah.
That's all part of the vibe as well. But it's like I was quite surprised at how similar a lot of it looked. A lot of the interior, particularly because of its elevation and its higher rainfall, and even the mystery of the Nuragic towers is so similar to the mystery of the round towers of Ireland.
Yeah.
And the same kind of nonsense is pushed out about them, that they were for fortified defense and all this, and they're not.
And I don't believe that.
And then they have the ring, what they call the ring forts in Ireland. They're very, very similar, with the tapered walls going in, and also the round towers of Ireland also tapered like the Nuragic. So there seems to be some kind of, I've been looking at the round towers of Ireland for a long time now, and I'm convinced there's some kind of soil conditioners that they've existed and it's not, and it wasn't originally my theory. It was Philip S. Callan's theory, an American engineer who lived here during World War II, and I totally agree with him and I think there's a similar story with the Nuragics in the towers in Sardinia. There's the same kind of vibe: tower, sacred well, male, female. It's very interesting.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
All this stuff, this is one of the things that I just talked about, and I wanted to talk to you about it too. There's a couple of things that you're bringing to my mind. First of all, they say that the towers in Ireland are after the towers. Do you think that's true? Do you think that?
Yeah, no, it's not true, and I'll tell you why.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, the whole theory that the towers were built by Christians rests upon one factor only, and that is that they were used a Roman mortar cement. That was and that's definitely true. However, that Roman mortar cement existed for 500 years before the arrival of Christianity, and they make this bizarre assumption that Irish people didn't go to Europe and learn how to make this cement, or Roman traders, and which we know Agricola, the Roman historian, said that Ireland was very well known to Roman traders, that they didn't come to Ireland and teach the Irish how to make this cement. The assumption was it wasn't until Christianity came along and showed them how to make this cement. The cement is very specific. It's made with straw, sand, lime, and bull's blood. We're back to that again. It's used plasticizer to make it sticky.
Really?
And that was it. And that's the whole thing with the Irish Round Towers. And if you look at some of them, you see that classic thing where you have this one in Kildare that is, it's almost comical. The bottom of it is this beautiful stonework. The whole thing, the older it gets, the better the stonework. You see that all over the world. This beautiful masonry. Yeah. And on top of it is the part where the Christian monks repaired the tower. And it's literally just rubble piled up on top of the cement.
It's garbage.
It's not the same builders. It's not the same skills.
Well done.
It's not the same skills. And there's other things. Oh, when I was in school, they told us that the reason why the doors are off the ground is so when the Vikings came, the monks used to go into the towers with their stuff. Yeah. And then wait to be burned alive, or wait to be starved out or something.
Right.
The towers are those. I think there's a tuning mechanism in that. I think there's some kind of tuning mechanism, like a radio antenna.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that.
And if you look at the Nuragis, they're the same. They're highly okay. There is with the Irish Round Towers and the Nuragis, a basic structure that conforms to a certain design. However, it's variable by height in terms of the landscape. And I think the Nuragis are the same. Some of them are quite squat. So they look like those Irish clucons, stone beehive huts, which are actually the precursor of the round towers. And then some of them are absolutely immense and voluminous masonry. So and again, this is something that needs to be looked at. Is the specific design not so much an aesthetic thing, or is it an actual technical function? That's what I want to know.
I think that's true. I think you're right. And I think it's time for us to stop. Okay, there's stuff that we have to stop talking about as if it's correct, Thomas. One of the things that I think will help is that my view is that stone is a living thing. Stone is a living thing, just like everything else on this planet is a living thing. And stone has memory, and stone has energy. And people like Maria Wheatley have been proving that forever, right? And before her, and before her, and before her, right? Stone has frequency. Stone has living energy. Yeah, and stone has memory. You have to remember that the base of stone is silica. Okay, what do we make computer chip memory out of? Silica.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. And for me, stone is alive. Okay, stone is alive, and so why wouldn't these? I mean, the other thing you have to factor in on Sardinia is there's 6,000 to 8,000 of these things. They were built in, I think, en masse for a reason. En masse for a reason. A better reason than, say, building a sports stadium to collect energy, to act like an energy collector for those lovely people who are sort of running those kinds of things now. It was a different thing altogether. But because stone is alive, because stone has a frequency, it was used for other things. And the other thing that I'm pondering right now, because you see other people's beautiful and brilliant work on megaliths and all of that, is why is it, Thomas, every time we approach a building that could be got into, we assume it's a tomb? Why? I don't understand that. What if we did not have that expectation that that's what it was? What would we see?
We would see, like recently in Doubt Hall in County Meath in Ireland, they found an enormous new passage chamber, and they had the archaeologist on the Irish TV news was going, if she had a penny for every time she said the word tomb,
right.
Where's the bodies? Nowhere.
Exactly.
What do I see? Art like here's a classic Nouth in Ireland. That was opened up by Professor Ryan in Rin. Sorry, I can't pronounce his name. In 1957, and he wrote in his book about the excavation one of the best best pieces of archaeological exploration text I've ever read. It's like Indiana Jones. He talks about peeking his head through, switching on the electric light, and then seeing all this megalithic artwork going down 30 meters down, and then finding the artifacts. Not one single body was found. Not one single body. And this is an open, fresh mound, right? With two chambers, and then he comes out, and then his report comes out, and he says it was a tomb dedicated to veneration of ancestor veneration on the autumnal equinox.
All right.
Now, I'll tell you why he says that. The same reason why in the House de Malta, in the House South, the Hypogeum of House Affalini, Jesuits controlled the archaeology.
That's the thing, right?
That's the thing. And anything pre-Christian is the infrastructure of death and sacrifice, mass murder. Anything post-Christian is the infrastructure of hope and faith.
And resurrection.
And it's a completely Christian thing. That's where that comes from.
Right.
Because if you go to the Middle East and you talk to Israeli or Arabic archaeologists, they don't talk about tombs. They talk about temples. They talk about buildings. It's only the Christianized ones in the West.
There you go. See, this is an important thing that we need to throw off. We need to shove. We need to, And if I think maybe what's important is you pick and choose what you watch. Maybe.
Yeah, it is. Well, it is. It is changing. I mean, I know one archaeologist here who actually left the business because of it. She now sells cosmetics. She qualified, but she got sick and tired of, like, if they found, like in Ireland, it's always a tomb, always. And there was a guy there, now he's dead now, I can't remember his name, but he was the high priest, literally, of Irish archaeology for about 50 years. And he was a fanatical Catholic. He was Opus Dei. And he was based out of University College Galway. And basically, he was anything that was remotely good, well made, was deemed Christian. Anything that was crude was deemed pagan. And some of his I have one of his lectures that someone recorded back in the 90s before he died. And he's talking about what a wonderful guy St. Patrick was. He was a lovely guy and everyone loved him. And that's why we all became Christians. Like, talking to these are people studying PhD level archaeology courses, modules, and they're being told this stuff like they're children. Now, this guy ruled the roost for years. Now, and he was also notoriously misogynist and sexist. He said, women should be only making. He used to say things like, openly, women should be making tea and sandwiches at the dig spots and not be down there in the trenches. This kind of nonsense.
Yeah.
She left, and she told me that, like, he was absolutely nuts, this guy. But yet he was held up like this. He was the state archaeologist. He was like that guy. What's his name? Zawas in Egypt. He was the Irish version of that.
Yeah, that guy.
Total establishment spook, but also believing it because he was a religious nut as well. And on the tape that I have of one of the lectures, you can actually hear a student. The student had recorded it for his own benefit, and later on you can hear a student leaning over to him and saying, "What is this guy shitting on about?" You actually hear the other student say
that. That's great.
And that's why so many dropped out of it.
Well, archaeology and anthropology both, they're Frankfurt School tools. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how else are you going to make the Bible work? If you have to keep that 5,000-year-old myth going of Genesis.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so there were two other things that strike me. Okay, first of all, I'm sure that you have the same deep connection to and interest in just the elementals. Now, the elementals are a category all their own. They mustn't be sort of mistaken for divas or any of those sorts of things that also deal with the natural world. But it strikes me, with this amount of stone, with this amount of sacred water, and frankly, the trees on that island I find intriguing. Did you have sort of a feeling about them when you were there?
They were the most gnarly cork trees I've ever seen anywhere. They were like the Ents from, but they were short as well. There's no tall trees.
Yeah.
They were like, but there was around the Park of Megalithic, and there was I was laughing at them because they squat. I mean, cork trees are kind of pretty, but these ones are kind of, maybe from the wind, they're kind of funny looking. What about that? Yeah, I always saw that.
Yeah. Well, are they olive trees or are they something else?
Cork and olive, I think.
Cork. You're all cork. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway, it strikes me that the elemental presence there must be absolutely palpable, really, for almost anyone. As you're approaching the rocks, the water. The water is also about memory. It's not just rocks about memory. Water has memory. Water remembers the astral. Water remembers emotion. I mean, just ask Dr. Emoto So we're also talking about sacred water there and sacred wells, and this is something that I started to broach with Thomas a while back because honestly, I've been seeing reflections of the Untersberg in windows and lakes in that movie, The Sound of Music. And they're everywhere. They're everywhere. That's why I was asking you that question not too long ago about what's magical about reflections, because it's being used in certain ways. So you have the sacred wells there. Certainly Santa Cristina should be stopped for us because not only is it a well, it's a neurologic village. So what?
And you will not believe you cannot believe the engineering skills is astounding. And at the bottom is this circular dome. It's worth going to Sardinia just for that one alone.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, we got to go. We've got to go there.
Yeah, and then it's surrounded by net. They tell you that these are carved with Bronze Age tools, and you couldn't get a razor blade between them. But not only that, the complex geometry to kind of bring the steps down to the well, and then at the very bottom there's a kind of a rough well. It almost looks like a giant cistern, and it was a hole in the roof, and. So this thing at the bottom must be spectacularly ancient. If that thing there is Bronze Age, leading down to it. Water, memory, you're right about that. This is the thing, the same, see, a lot of that was, I was there with Maria, and Maria, she gave a very eloquent description of it. Yeah. And I said, I think there's another, also the moon appears in, I think, every 8 years. There's a very interesting lunar alignment. It actually lights the pool up. But I said, Maria, there's other aspects here too. I think these are used for scrying. I think you could stand. I just think of all people standing up the steps, looking down the water, and eventually something will come through. And I think we heard a lot about holy wells for people getting the water for curing arthritis or for taking care of sick babies, but they're also designed so that they're easy to scry in. They're easy to scry in. That they're comfortable at the right height, and that's what they're there for. And you said about the water reflections. Okay, anyone who's ever went fishing, when you have a fishing line going into the water, it suddenly takes a giant turn, and that's refraction. Now that would have been very strange to our ancestors. Why is something that should be down here is over here? Well, why? Because that surface level there creates a dimensional shift. That is a dimensional shift. And what we're seeing is the reflection is not the same world that's above it. And when it's viewed from above, but let's see, one of my books, the Druid Code, I wrote a long passage about what the reality of a kingfisher's life must be. A kingfisher bird lives at the side of the river, but also has another life under the water where it's an aquatic creature. Right. Our ancestors, this is one of the things that we lose in modern society is the mythological ways of viewing things. That under the water is not just under the water; it's another world. Yes, and that's what the sacred wells were just as much about. Absolutely, and caves. And then at that Santa Cristina, you've got both. You've got the cave and the well.
Yeah, and it's not a sacred well because the Catholics decided it was. The Catholics grabbed it because it was a sacred well. Well,
that's what they've done everywhere. All the holy wells in Ireland are all extruded wells. No exceptions. They're all extra. They're all venerated to the Crom Cruach or the Cailleach Beara or Breed. Without exception, and they just call them holy wells, or St. Patrick's drinking well. This kind of nonsense.
Yeah. We need to say sacred or something else. Even I don't know, but there's definitely.
I don't have a problem with the holy well. You see, in Ireland, I made a video about this today. Ireland is tolerant of witchcraft and always was, even when we had Christianity. We had no history of witch persecutions in Ireland. And Catholic countries generally don't. Catholic countries are a lot more tolerant of paganism than, say, have Germany or Sweden during the Reformation. For some reason, I don't know why. I think the puritanical thing and Lutheranism had a lot to do with that. But we're tolerant. So I don't mind the term holy well, because holy just could apply to any sacred. It's sacred. It's a new term. I agree it has to come up with. But I do think that if you go to any holy well in Ireland, there's an elderly Catholic or Protestant lady there, and you tell her they used to be Druid wells, and she'll have no problem with that.
Yeah, good.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sure, of course it did.
Yeah, of course it is, exactly. And you'll get that in places where the stuff, like I was in Portugal there recently, you'll get that in places where as they said in that John B. Keane play, The Field, the skim of the Christian above the mountain of the pagan,
Yeah, and there's something I haven't quite sussed out yet. Maybe you'll have some, maybe it'll be something you can run with at some point. But on Sardinia they harvest a kind of a sea moss, and they weave with it. They weave cloth with it. And since right, and since it's a feminine island, I mean, there's some kind of mermaid-ish vibe going on with that, because they're also very long-lived. There are wonderful stories about folk witches, which we talked about privately as well, but there's something about gathering this moss from the sea water, the sea salt, and weaving cloth with it that is more than a metaphor. Very much, it's a metaphor, but it's also more than a metaphor, which is what you were just saying.
It's shamanic too. It's shamanic because you're actually enclosing yourself in the creatures of the sea.
Exactly.
So it's the same thing as like our ancestors when this is the thing with industrial farming. We just slaughter animals and kill them.
Yeah.
But in the past, when they killed animals, they would sanctify their existence by dressing up as them, wearing their pelts. This kind of thing. It was like they were one of the same. It was like and that's probably the same kind of idea. I think that you would find with that, like the fishermen in Ireland who have on the islands, who have specific family names in the patrons of the jumpers, the weave, right?
Yeah.
You will find in that, and also Sardinia, and the Inuit have that too. Like the diagonal lines. That goes all the way back to proto-shamanic cultures.
It does.
And it was a way of venerating the connection with the sea people. And again, the Sardinians knew they came from the sea. And they would have taken that in lots of ways, not just people coming on boats, but we actually are of the sea.
Atlantis, I mean, they could have come right out. This is, covering themselves with their history, their ancestry as well. In cellular ways. Oh, and in watery ways. We just talked about communicating via water and pulling the emotion or the memory of the ocean out of the sea via this moss and weaving it and wearing it. I mean, I just think that's a fantastic thing.
They're far more sophisticated ideas than they're given credit for.
Yeah.
They're just showing us about charming folk things. But they're not. They're doorways to tremendously complex understandings of archetypal forces and the tribal relationships in the society and in the environment.
Mm-hmm. And that would go back to tons of, several bardic tales that you find in Ireland. You know that I am completely obsessed with the Battle of Moytura and all of the levels that go with that one that I haven't gotten to yet. So they talk about people coming out of the sea as well. I mean, lots of legends in Ireland about people who come out of the sea. The Fomorans, I think, were supposed to have been. Yeah. Anyway,
being an island, like Sardinia being an island, it will always be from the sea.
Yes.
Or the weather, like the two of the island arrived in a storm.
Yes.
You'll always have that, yeah.
Now, what about? I know you've been there, and you've been to a million places there. I know there's one place we're not supposed to go. That place which shall not be named. We're not going. But one of the places we might want to go is to Scali. Have you been there?
I think I have. Refresh my memory.
It's in a mountain. It's in a cave in a mountain, and it's huge, and we have to hike in for like a mile. And,
no, I haven't.
It's it's on a mountain in a cave called Monte Tiscali, and
oh yeah, Monte Tiscali, yeah.
Yeah.
Guess what? I chickened out of that one. Not because I was scared of it. I was tired.
Yeah.
We were absolutely knackered, and I just couldn't do it. I just said, I'll skip this one.
Yeah.
But I know the one, and I saw the footage that came back. It's well, the hike down to it's not so bad. The hike up, back out again, because you're going back up the mountain. But it's a complex of tunnels all under the ground.
Yeah. I think we got to go there. Maybe we just have to dedicate a day to that, because
we were running around non-stop, and I just said, forget it. I'm not doing anymore. I was just so tired at that point.
Right.
That's a fantastic. That's a beautiful walk to it as well.
Yeah, I was just afraid that you were going to say no. That's the one that almost cost me my life.
No, that was a remote one up in the mountains. That wasn't a cave. It was like a cairn, and it was a ruined temple.
Okay.
It was that was a different thing.
Okay.
That was literally in the middle of nowhere.
Well, I know you're going to keep us away from that, so that's all I care about. You're all over that one, Thomas. I know you are. So. We are going to talk about Corsica maybe next time as a different island. And the more that we're into this stuff, the more I realize how different these islands are and the focus of these islands. And I think it's fascinating. I think it's absolutely fascinating. I was saying this thing that keeps coming up for me and Thomas. I don't know if he has anything to say about it right now, but Corsica is associated with Napoleon. It just is. I'm sure that there's a whole lot more to it than that. It's ancient, just like Sardinia is. But you can't, it's very, very difficult, especially since it's built like a battlement, a fortress. It's quite difficult to get past this entity that is Napoleon, or whatever the entity, whatever that is that's around him.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and when we think of Napoleon, at least in the United States, we were taught that Napoleon's troops shot the nose off the Sphinx. Whether or not that's actually true, I have no idea. It's just folklore. It's,
There's propaganda, a lot of that from the British and stuff. Napoleon was a supernatural figure, no matter how you look at it. You're talking about a guy when he was exiled to Elba, and then he came back. The Bourbon kings sent the entire French army down to arrest him and kill him.
But they did.
And he walked in front of them with the officer saying, "Shoot him." And he said to them, he said to the French troops, the French army, "Why would you shoot me? I love you." And they all went, "Vive Napoleon," and they all ran around them and hugged him. He had a power over his troops that was beyond an officer. There was a genuine love for him. And in another time, in another place, I often wondered if those European wars at that period had been won by him, if he had won the Battle of Waterloo, would we be talking about Napoleon in the same way we talk about Marcus Aurelius or some Plato? Because I've read quite a lot on Napoleon, and that guy was special. He was not this megalomaniac. His wars in Europe were genuinely about improving the lives of Europeans. Wherever, there was, he invaded Russia. He wanted to take down all the old royal aristocracy and replace them with elected governments. And he wanted to build infrastructure, and he did. And he wanted to modernize society so people wouldn't starve, and there would be better agricultural and better opportunities for ordinary people, because he was from that background himself. And yet, because of the whole history with the British Empire and Waterloo and everything, he's portrayed as this a cross between a psychopath and a clown. And he was anything but that. He was a remarkable person in many ways, and he wasn't short even. That was another thing. Was
he not?
No, that was something. He was average height for his time. It was all part of propaganda.
Yeah,
all part of propaganda. And so whatever forces gestated him in there, they must have been some bloody powerful forces.
Yeah. And there's a couple things. We keep getting, Thomas and I keep getting these underground sphinxes keep popping up for us right now. Thomas posted something not too long ago, and I went, "Oh, underground sphinx," and then the next day somebody brought me an underground sphinx in Transylvania.
Why did why did when he arrived in Egypt, did Napoleon asked to be left alone and spent the night alone inside the Sphinx, inside the Great Pyramid at Giza? And when he came out the next morning, they asked him, what was it like? And he says, please don't ever ask me to tell you what I saw inside there. So this guy was deeper than he's been portrayed as the cartoon in history.
Yeah. Well, was it an initiation? Did he go there for 1 day, 3 days? I mean,
I think he might have went there and probably had a shamanic experience of some
yeah,
kind.
maybe so.
And in the language of his time and his place, that's probably how he rationalized it.
Yeah.
He was very anti-religion. But he was very pro-spiritual. That's another thing too. He was very anti the priest. I mean, he snatched the crown off the Pope and put it on his own head because the Pope wouldn't crown him Emperor of Europe.
Did he really?
I
love that.
Oh yeah, he basically told the Pope to go get lost and made himself Emperor of Europe. And he was hated because he the French, I mean, the dedication that his army had to him was not like fanatical. It was genuine love.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen if you're an idiot or a clown or a bad person.
Of course not. And I wouldn't care. Honestly, I wouldn't know anything about him. I would never, as an American, we're never really particularly taught about him, except in cartoon fashion, briefly. You know how that goes. Anyway,
well, if you go to his tomb in Paris, you get the same energy that you get in the great megaliths. You're overwhelmed by the power that comes off his tomb.
Well, here's why I started to find him interesting, and I really only find him interesting by virtue of this fellow Kaspar Hauser, whom I'm sure you know who I mean. He is he's very much the subject of a study by anthroposophists, which is sort of my way back.
Rudolf Steiner wrote
cosmology,
a big book on him. Yeah. On Kaspar Hauser, yeah.
Kaspar Hauser, and he was of the Napoleonic line, and they did not want anyone of the Napoleonic bloodline sitting on any thrones. And I think they said he was in line for the House of Baden, perhaps one of those.
Yes. Well, he said he was he just appeared on the street on Walpurgis night, I think it was.
Was it really?
Yeah, and that in Baden, and he said that he was blah, and people became fascinated by him. And some people said he was a fraud, and some people said he was the child of Europe, that this was the hope for Europe.
That's exactly what I think.
He was beaten to death, I think.
Or stabbed and beaten or something. Yeah. I just got chills up my back.
Rudolf Steiner had a huge affinity towards him. I do have a couple of books on him somewhere. I read them. I have to say I found them quite strange. I found the whole story very strange. But I like yourself, I want to know why there was a compulsion to beat him to death or stab him. Yeah. Exactly.
I think that a pretty good case is put forward. There's a fellow Irishman, Terry Boardman. Do you know him? He's put out videos, a really interesting video on Hauser that sort of lines things up in his, here's some logic that looks like it's the logic, The thing about it is, I know that they murdered his younger brother, maybe one or two younger brothers. They just murdered them as babies. But him they whisked away and hid. And they hid him in rooms where it looks, his physiology seemed to reflect that he'd been maybe forced to sit down with his legs straight out in front of him.
Yes.
That had been dark rooms, and so all of his his psychic capacities were on full tilt boogie all the time. And it wasn't until he was taken and they started to teach him that those things started to fade. Those capacities started to fade.
Yeah, like when they take those wild children and bring them into civilization. Yeah,
exactly. But in my view, it's a greater crime to take away someone's incarnation, their destiny, their karma, to a halted destiny, a halted incarnation is a bigger crime than murder. And they say one of the reasons they think that they didn't kill him is because they felt that he would turn right around and come back and fulfill his destiny. Which is odd in reincarnation. It's odd to be able to turn right around and come back. But there was something about killing him that was out of the question, Thomas.
Very interesting.
Yeah?
Yeah, very interesting. The Napoleonic thing then kind of does bring an interesting story into it, doesn't it?
Yeah, and this
Because
is
there was that period in German history and European history, they were still afraid of Napoleon even after he was dead. Napoleon was a kind of a bogeyman for the aristocrats. You know, he was a bogeyman. You know, how dare a commoner have this kind of power over the army and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that I'm a king, I'm a god. How he's supposed to have that? You see, like when people come with us on this trip, okay, you're not getting just a tour. You're getting an adventure. You're getting an adventure. Anyone can go on a tour.
Yeah.
Not anyone. Yeah, that's very nice. But what you want is an adventure.
Yeah.
And when we will arrive in places, doors will open. We will meet people. They will suggest things, and we will find things. And that's on top of the regular tour. There will be other things that will happen, and that's the adventure part of it.
It is.
You know, and we have to. This will be seen in the mythological light as we're getting on the ferry to go between Sardinia and Corsica. We'll be transforming through one state of consciousness to another, because we'll need a shift in consciousness to go to a line that's very different.
That's right.
These are the kind of things, you know. I wouldn't use the word spiritual experience, but definitely a consciousness shifting experience. Otherwise, what's the point in going?
Exactly. These are the kinds of things you need to do for yourself. And Thomas is absolutely right. There's a ferry involved. We're crossing water. It's huge. That's huge. Okay, so and imagine what it's going to be like at dinner, sitting around. You know what I mean? That's when some serious stuff happens, because you bounce things off each other, and it's like in community. It's in that community that things get elevated, and you get lots of breakthroughs during that period of time. Okay, but is there anything else you want to talk about? Because I want to just say a couple things that are new for you. Can I do that?
Go for it. No, I think I've covered everything.
All right. Okay. Well, we'll be back anyway. First of all, he's got a new Facebook page, which is gorgeous, and I recommend it to you. Well, I think you're shooting people over there anyway, aren't you? You're funneling people kind of away from your old page to your new page, right?
Yeah, well, I have a manager now, so they're telling me to behave myself, and I can't be the guy that I used to be down the pub in public anymore.
Man. Okay,
no, you can't, because everything you say is from a joke to is used against you. So I've been told to be a bit more professional, and I can be my kind of jolly character down the pub character in real life, but not on my professional.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I remember I've sent Thomas some messages, like I'll send him a joke that I think is really ribald that he'll really like, and I'll say, do not put this on your page. You cannot get another 30-day ban. You mustn't do that.
and the 30-day bans I got were for absolutely nothing. I wouldn't mind.
Exactly.
But no, I was targeted, because there was people on Facebook who would post blatantly awful things and not get banned, because what happens is you have to be reported, and there's these like lunatics and stalkers who are sitting there waiting for anything that they could possibly, he said this, let's report him. It was literally like that. And that's what it came down to. And so I'm reformed.
Are you?
No, but I'm behaving myself. I'm playing the game. Protocol.
To a certain extent, you have to. And I'm
now with all the censorship.
Yeah, right. If you lose your voice entirely, right?
Yeah.
Well, listen, I want you to go over there and check out his new Facebook page, because it's quite nice. I like it a lot. And in fact, I commented as soon as I saw it. He's got...
And a lot of new people have come into it. A lot of good discussion coming along now. It's definitely going to become... It's got 2,000 followers now, I think, of the day. And I think it's definitely going to roll. I can feel that that's going to become an important Facebook page.
I think so too.
General... What's the word? Amalgamation of ideas from things, and also it goes well with my new website, Moss Upon Stones.
I was going to ask you about I was going to say you should put that out there too, because Thomas's website was torpedoed. When was that? Not too long ago. They yanked it.
About a month ago. I don't think it was so much controversial. I just think they panicked. They panicked, and I think a lot of it had to do with that European Union rule on cookies. Because it was an older type website, So they just panicked and they just shut. There was nothing controversial on my website, but I think it just panicked. I think all these providers got frightened when Google started going after Alex Jones and people like that, and I think a lot of people that were hurt were almost like what's the word? Collateral damage. I think a lot of and that's what I think happened there. But you know, something was a good thing in the end because it gave me a new start. It gave me a new way of doing things, and it's given me a lot more free time now. Because I'm really getting big into filming now, making films, and that's really what I'm enjoying the most.
Right, and also there's something on his page you need to check out. He's doing an online, is it discussion? How would you characterize your Egypt thing?
The magical Egypt thing, I was contacted by the lady who runs that in Australia and her husband, and they just said, "Is it online?" I've never done anything. This is a new world for me as well. An online seminar. And there'll be people like Laird Scranton and a few others on there with me. And I said, they said, oh, I don't know anything about Egypt, don't talk about megaliths. And so I'll be talking about the sort of the elements of consciousness and magic related to megaliths in Ireland and Western Europe. Great. So it's going to be interesting, that one. It's going to be interesting. I'm not sure how it, technically how it's done. It's an all new world for me, but I do kind of like the idea.
I know, me too. I actually just broke down and hired someone to make a website for me that will pull in all of my pieces, because all of my.
I'll tell you something.
Yeah, I got 3 or 4 really strong pieces, and I just need I need a central site for everything. I think we're kind of all leveling up. We're leveling up, or we're fading away. That's kind of what's happening. Anyway, check out Thomas's new Facebook page and his new website. I quite like that.
The website is www.mossuponstones.com.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think we have to up our game now. We have to produce better videos, better discussions like this. You're right. It costs money to hire people to do it properly, but you know what? It does make a difference because we've all been tinkering to this point, trying to make websites.
It does.
And have someone to do that for you allows you to do your work.
There will be a section of my new website that has to do with these journeys, and I would assume if I can talk him into it, I'll be working with Thomas a couple times a year, I hope, because those are the kinds of places that I go, and I'd be a fool not to get Thomas involved. So you'll see that section of my website as well. Gotcha. Yeah, when it comes up.
Yeah, you're back now. Okay, that's lost of this.
Oh, did you lose me for a second? You'll see a section of my website that's about the journeys. And I know Thomas will be involved because I want him involved with at least a couple every year if he's got the time. We'll see, But I'd be a fool not to have him. So, okay, so we've got the news about where to check out Thomas's new stuff. We've got news about the trip. Remember that you can talk to Thomas about it. He's very accessible. You can talk to me about it. We're both very accessible on Facebook completely. Or you can email me at worldlectures@aol.com and we'll get. Oh no, it just went off. I got to end the meeting though, so I can try to get the recording.
Yeah, back. You're back now. You're back now.
It just went away.
It just froze. Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to end the meeting and I'm going to put my version up, and then maybe if Thomas feels like it, he'll mess with it and he'll put a better version up. So.
Yeah, I'll throw some photographs of relevant things and stuff like that we talked about.
Lovely.
Like I said in the corner, yeah. Because it does look good.
Yeah, I loved what you did last time. So we'll get back with you guys in 4 weeks, 6 weeks, something like that, whenever it feels like a good time to do it, and we'll try to get a chat room going so you can ask us questions in real time. In real time. Okay? All right, Thomas, Thank you so much.
Okay, Cara, have a good weekend.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.